Hi guys, a warm welcome back. Today we'll be taking a look at the Hong Kong market as well as some of its constituents. Before we begin, remember to take a second to give the video a like and subscribe as you greatly help out the channel. Without further ado, let's first start off with the Hang Seng Index. So this week is a short week. We only had 4 days of trading, and this Friday, which is today, is currently closed for holiday in Hong Kong. So let's first start off with the Hang Seng Index. So as you can see, the Hang Seng Index from the low of 19,178 to a high of 22,523. We seem to have broken through this 61.8% at 21245, which was also this previous resistance here. Unfortunately, on this particular Thursday, there was this bearish looking red candle, and on Friday, we started to get down. But thankfully, we managed to close somewhere near the middle for the week. So that is not too bad a sign for now. Looking at its supports on the way down, you can see that if 19,178 was the recent low to a recent high of 21415, we found some support at this 78.6% at 20936, just below this 21,000 psychological support. So we'll be looking towards this 61.8% at 20560 and also this 20297. These two will be a very strong support for Hang Seng Index next week, and we shouldn't break down. If we were to break down, then that would not be a good situation. However, that said, there's also these gaps that needs to be filled. So there's one particular gap that needs to be filled here, and this gap, the low starts from around 20272 to a high of around 20494. So this 100 to 200 point gap needs to be closed. Looking at the supports, this conversion line is currently at 20652, and this rate baseline is at 20297. So you can expect Hang Seng Index, if we were to pull back to around 20297, around this 50% Fibonacci support levels. If 20,000 psychological support were to break down, then things will not look too good. So let's move on to the Hang Seng Tech Index. So the Hang Seng Tech Index, a very similar situation. You can see that this previous resistance here has also turned into previous resistance. So we saw a lot of sellers around. Looking at its recent low, 3755, the recent high of 4883. You can see that this 61.8% at 4452 was being tested, but we were not able to go back up to test this 4642. So if we are not able to, 4642 will be our next resistance before we can retest a high of 4883. So currently now we are inside the clouds for the Hang Seng Tech Index. So when we are in the clouds, do expect a lot of support and also a lot of resistance at the same time. So assuming that this is the recent high of 4505 and the recent low of 3755.89, we are looking towards these support levels. You can see on the Friday, we found some support at this 4344, 78.6%. So two supports will be looking at 4218 and 4130, which coincides with this blue conversion line at 4233 and also this red baseline at 4135. So 4135 has to hold. If 4135 do not hold and 4130 start to break down, then it's likely for us to see the 4042 being retested at 38.2%. At the same time, we'll close this gap here. If the 4,000 psychological support were to break down, then things will start to turn ugly. We might be heading towards this last support at 23.6 at 3932 here. So let's move on to some of its constituents. We'll first start off with Tencent, one of its biggest constituent. So Tencent, as you can see, there was not much movement for the week. We've actually closed near the peak, so that's a good sign. But for now, we can see that we're still on a downtrend for now, and is clearly facing a lot of rejection. At the same time, we are facing a cloud resistance as well. You can see that this was being tested twice, and now it's a third time. So hopefully by next week, we can actually punch up above the cloud. That will be a good indication for this particular counter. So for its recent swing, you can see that this resistance here at 78.6%, 365 was being tested, and we are unable to break out above this resistance. If we are able to break out of this resistance, 365 next week, then 375 would likely to be within reach. Supports to watch out for will be this particular support here, this red baseline, which is partially covered, is at 358.1. And if you were to pull back down, then we're likely to be looking towards this blue conversion line at 348. There is also a small gap here that needs to be closed, which is currently at 335.8 to a low of around 338.2. So that's just about a $3 gap that needs to be closed at around just below this 340 psychological support here for Tencent. So let's move on to 9988 or Alibaba. So Alibaba, you can see that we are actually approaching the clouds. We hit the clouds, and there was some sellers appearing here because of a huge cloud resistance. Nevertheless, we pulled back down, and we are well supported by this red baseline here. So that is a good sign for now. The next support that we'll be looking at after this red baseline at 91.73 will be this AIA 58, this blue conversion line here, which is a very critical support to watch. Resistance to watch will be, you can clearly see that we actually break up above the 61.8%, 94.55. Unfortunately, we did not continue our momentum through. So if we are able to go back above this 94.55, 98.65, and 103.80 will be our next resistance and target as well. Not forgetting, there is also this very large gap that needs to be closed, and it's currently around $82 to a high of around $89. So that's around a $7 gap that needs to be closed. So it's likely for us to hit back to the low 80s if the gap will be closed, perhaps next week or in the upcoming weeks ahead. Let's move on to Meituan. So Meituan, as you can see, is a very strong stock. For now, we can see that previous resistance here has now turned into support. So that is what we want to see, and hopefully you can trend up higher next week. If you were to break down this support level, then that would not be a good sign. If you look at the recent swing from 130.1 to 187.3, last Friday, just yesterday rather, we were holding this 171.1 pretty well, so 8.6%. So if we were to start breaking down, then 165, 158, 151 will all be strong critical supports for Meituan. Blue conversion line is currently at 169.8, just below this $100, 170 psychological support. And if you retreat back further, then we're looking towards 164.6 at this red baseline. Looking at its resistance, long-term resistance at 61%, 178. Once it's cleared, then we're likely to be looking towards 198.2, towards the $200 psychological resistance. So let's move on to NetEase. So NetEase is a pretty strong stock, similar to Meituan. You can see that this was previous resistance here, so it has now turned into support. Hopefully next week, it can continue to rally up. So you can see that at 171.7, we see some rejection here, which was also a previous resistance here as well, and also a previous resistance here. So above 170, there's actually a lot of sellers appearing for this NetEase. Looking at the supports level, we'll be looking at 162.3, which was already broken down. So the next support level will be 156, 151, as well as 147. Since this blue conversion line at 159 has already sort of like is holding it just above this just yesterday's close. So if you were to retreat down further, then we're likely to be looking towards this particular low here at 151.8 at this red baseline. That said, there was already a gap that was created and it was actually closed just yesterday. So that is a good sign for now. If you were to pull back even lower, then around 130 to 142, you can see there's a lot of cloud support level. So let's move on to NIO 9866. So for NIO, you can see that it seems to be trending up. There is this low here, there is this higher low here, and there is this particular high here, there is this higher high. So that is a good sign for now. If we can continue this momentum, then that would be a good, and that is a sign of an uptrend. So looking at some of its resistance from the low, you can see that it's 38.2% and 137 was being tested. So we actually struggled to clear it. So if we actually do punch up above it, then we're looking towards this 148.4, 160 psychological resistance as well as 175.6. Looking at the supports, if we were to start breaking down next Monday or even Tuesday, assuming that this 144.5 is the high, then we're likely to looking towards a support at 135, 127, and also 122. 127 and 122 will be a stronger support. As you can see that this red and blue conversion line is currently holding pretty well, and respectively, it will be 129.3 and 124.3. So this is a very strong support for NIO. Not forgetting, there's also a gap that was actually created here and also here as well. So the gap low of this will be around 117.6, and this high will be around 123.8. So let's move on to the next stock, which is JD. So JD is 9618. You can see that there's actually not much movement for the week. We had 4 days of green candles, not much movements. For the resistance to watch, you can see that this 38.2% from its recent swing of 189.4 to a high of 286. So 226.4 seems to be a very strong resistance for JD.com, 9618. Looking at its recent swing, 249.4 to 189.4, you can see that 61.8% is once again being tested, but we failed to actually sustain above it. So this 236 and 249 was not being retested at all. Looking at its supports level on its way down, you can see that this blue conversion line is acting as a very important support to watch, which is around 212.3. This red conversion line is 237, so this 237 will be a very strong resistance for JD.com. There's also 2 gaps that needs to be closed here. There's a very small gap here at around 209 to 213, and there's also another gap here that needs to be closed at around 199.6 to a high of around 205. So there's a $5 to $6 gap just above this $200 psychological support. So it's likely for us to fill these 2 gaps on the way down, perhaps next week or even in upcoming weeks ahead. So let's move on to Baidu. Ticker is 9888. So Baidu is pretty impressive, perhaps due to the results. You can see that there's a double bottom here, and we immediately spring back up. So that's a good sign. If this is the low, you can see this is higher low. This is the high here, and this is the high high. So it's a very good sign that we are actually trending up for Baidu, and hopefully we can continue the momentum next week. Looking at its resistance, you can see this 78.6% at 145.7. It's a very strong resistance for Baidu, and there's also a lot of sellers around here. If we were to start pulling back down, in fact, we really started pulling back down the past 2 days, then you can see that 78.6%, 138.2 is currently holding. If you pull back lower, then 131, 126, and 120. This all acts as a very strong support for Baidu. Not forgetting there's also this a very strong gap up because of its results, and this gap is pretty big, just like Alibaba. So it's currently around 118 to a high of around 131. So that's about 10 to even $12 gap that needs to be closed. This blue conversion line and the red baseline is currently holding at around 130 and also 125 respectively. So these two are as a temporary support while Baidu tries to close this gap. Okay, let's move on to AIA. So AIA ticker is 1299. So 1299, once again, you can see that it's being rejected off. It's 78.6%, 8165 before it can retest the high of 8440. So you can see that they'll start pulling back down. We managed to hold at least 78.6% at 7980. And if you were to break down, then 7805, 7680, and 7555. Looking on this particular, just yesterday on Thursday, you can see that this blue conversion acted as a pretty strong support. We hit it and immediately bounced back up at 7903. The day low was at 905. So we'll pull back down lower, then we're likely to be looking at this red baseline at 7680, which is a very strong support for AIA. There is also, unfortunately, this gap that was created here at around $74 to a high of around $74.95. So there's around just a small gap of $1 gap that may be closed one day, someday. So let's move on to PingAn. So PingAn, unfortunately, it seems to be lagging behind. You can see the support here, but we did not get a very nice bounce compared to Baidu. So this double bottom seems to be a relief rally that is not very strong. And we Monday and Tuesday we did have we went up, even breaking above this red baseline. But unfortunately, on Wednesday and Thursday we started to break down this blue conversion line. So that is not a good sign for PingAn at all. You can see that this 61.8% was being tested at 50.20, and then we started to collapse down all the way to a low of closing the week at $47. So perhaps there's something wrong with PingAn. Maybe there's some internal insiders that are selling. Could be due to bad news coming up for PingAn. So it's important to watch out for this particular stock. If we start breaking down these lower lows at $45, then we may be starting to create even new lower lows. So that's not a good sign for PingAn. Resistance to watch will be this blue conversion line at 48.25 and this red baseline at 49.35. So lastly, let's move on to Xiaomi Corporation 1810. So you can see that Xiaomi managed to punch up to retest the recent high here. So there seems to be a double top, temporary resistance for Xiaomi. So hopefully when there's a sell-off next week or there's a pullback, we can find some support at around this level here, which is this blue conversion at 1164 and also this 1127. So this 40 cent support levels is a very strong critical support for Xiaomi. If we start to break down, then that would not be a good sign for now. Resistance to watch for 1810 will be 1228, 1288, and 1350. But it's critical for us to start breaking above this 1228 here. If not, we are unable to punch up successfully. Looking at the cloud is a very thick one from $12 to $13. So do expect a lot of cloud resistance for Xiaomi Corporation if we were to try to attempt to punch up above these clouds. So that's all for now. As of now, the Hang Seng Index seems to be a bit uncertain, and some of the stocks are going well, while some of them are lagging behind. So hopefully there's more momentum next week and the sentiments will to improve and there's more good news for us ahead. So if there's any changes, I'll give you guys an update. Thanks for stopping by. Till we meet again, appreciate the manipulation.